Issue 2 of the Sonic and DC crossover wastes no time, picking up immediately where we left off, with Darkseid having just secured the first of the 7 Chaos Emeralds right as Sonic and the Flash arrive on the scene. Sonic asks if this is the guy, and Flash confirms it with a grave warning. Whatever enemies Sonic has faced before, Darkseid is on a whole other level. Now, I touched on this in my video covering Issue 1. Yes, Sonic has battled threats that could destroy worlds or even unravel dimensions, but none of them quite compare to the sheer cosmic menace that is Darkseid. And that's not a slight against Sonic's rogues gallery, it just underscores the terrifying scope of what Darkseid is actually capable of. I mean, Superman once chose to hold Darkseid in place, completely willing to sacrifice himself because even he knew that leaving Darkseid alive was not an option. And yet, even after hearing that warning, Sonic remains optimistic about their inevitable fight. Ian Flynn's writing really shines through these comics, and it makes the character interactions feel pretty genuine and full of heart. There have been some criticisms of the crossover for being too heavy on references and fan service, but honestly, I see that as part of the fun. If you're not going to lean into the absurdity and sheer joy and spectacle of a crossover like this, then why even bother? Sonic and the Flash charge headfirst toward Darkseid, hoping that their sheer speed and force will be enough to pry the Chaos Emerald from Darkseid's grip. Sonic unleashes a rapid flurry of attacks, from his spin dash to his homing attack, which are some of his more powerful go-to moves. But through all of that, Darkseid remains unfazed. It's a display of the immense power gap between base Sonic and a godlike being such as Darkseid, who is also being juiced up from the Emerald. While Sonic tries to occupy Darkseid with his attacks, the Flash makes a direct play for the Emerald, but just as his fingers reach it, Darkseid effortlessly snatches him by the leg and throws both of them to the dirt. Realizing that they might be in over their heads, Flash urges Sonic to run, but escape won't come easy as Darkseid unleashes his dreaded Omega Beams. These beams aren't just fast, they pursue you relentlessly, tracking their targets with deadly precision and vaporizing anything alive on contact. Only someone as durable as Doomsday or a Kryptonian can hope to take a hit from one. As for the likes of Sonic and the Flash, the Omega Beams mean certain death if they hit their mark. The duo desperately tries to outmaneuver the beams, but it doesn't take long for Sonic to realize that there's no outrunning them. That's when Flash devises a plan: split up. One goes high, the other low. In a last-ditch maneuver, they trick the Omega Beams into colliding, and while the two manage to evade the beams, the explosion of the impact caught both of them and left them rather injured. Yet, the frightening part is that Darkseid doesn't even bother to finish the job. He's not worried about the Flash or Sonic, especially after that display. He simply opens a boom tube and vanishes, leaving both their egos and bodies injured as if they weren't even worth the effort. As Flash radios into the Justice League to report that Darkseid now possesses a Chaos Emerald, he still finds time to throw a playful jab at Sonic, teasing that he wasn't fast enough to stop him. I really like that the two managed to crack a smile at the joke despite getting whooped mere seconds ago, showing us that despite the gravity of the situation, they still have their little rivalry going. Meanwhile, we catch up with the rest of the League and see how their own searches are progressing. When Wonder Woman checks in, she notes that Amy is coordinating efforts on her end, and in the background, we catch a glimpse of her speaking with Vector, suggesting that she's enlisted the help of the Chaotix. Now, I doubt that we'll get to see much of their side mission, if anything, but just knowing that they're out there fighting or looking for an emerald makes the story feel more alive. When Batman checks in, he and Shadow are investigating leads in Radical Highway, a setting that kind of perfectly suits Batman, as it has dark skies and tall buildings and long bridges that are similar to Gotham's. We also learn that Tails and Cyborg are making solid progress on their Chaos Emerald tracker, which is nearly ready to be brought online. Following his clash with the Flash and Sonic, Darkseid returns to the Ragnarok, and unlike the first issue, we actually get to see a lot of his point of view. Darkseid informs Darkseid that the search for the other emeralds is ongoing, and Darkseid does not seem pleased by this. He questions why Darkseid was able to locate one Chaos Emerald, yet he cannot find the others, and Darkseid informs him that the emeralds are inherently chaotic by nature. Go figure. They resist detection, and they're seemingly trying to hide themselves from the Father Box. Emeralds. With the Justice League now active in this dimension and beginning to undermine his efforts, and the Chaos Emeralds also hiding from the Father Box, Darkseid is becoming irate. He commands his elite warriors to scour the planet in order to find the remaining emeralds at any cost. As for Darkseid himself, he intends to test the first emerald's power by integrating it into the dimensional engine in hopes to see whether the elusive relics are even worth the effort to obtain. As Darkseid's forces mobilize, Tails and Cyborg begin to track their movements, and by cross-referencing it with the Chaos Emerald tracker that they've been developing, they begin to narrow down on potential locations where the emeralds could be hiding. Cyborg quickly relays coordinates to the rest of the team, initiating a global scramble to recover the emeralds before Darkseid's forces can. As they take off, Silver and Green Lantern fly overhead towards the emerald closest to them, and they pass over Big the Cat and Froggy. Meanwhile, Sonic and the Flash are back at it, reigniting their rivalry, as Flash boasts that he can move within a picosecond, and Sonic basically says, "That's cute that your speed can still be measured." Their banter is pitch perfect, and honestly, it's the kind of dynamic that would absolutely shine in an animated format, which I'm still really hoping that we'll see in the near future. This line in particular, but also these comics in general, have sparked some debate as to who is faster, the Flash or Sonic, and I just want to throw in my 2 cents because they both have incredible feats of speed, but this run hasn't really shown favoritism one way or another, which I think is good, although I have seen some Sonic fans try to twist things and make it seem like Sonic beat the Flash in a race in issue 1, which that just isn't a thing. If we look outside of this crossover though, the Flash does have greater feats of speed, and that's a Sonic fan saying that. However, Sonic has limitless potential, so we'll see where the future takes him. On a more somber note, Batman raises a pressing question. What is the contingency plan? Even with just one Chaos Emerald, Darkseid is already a colossal threat. However, Superman believes they'll find the remaining emeralds and save the world before it's too late. Wonder Woman echoes Batman's concerns that they really do need a fallback plan in case things spiral out of control, and that's when Cyborg steps in, informing the team that he already has prepared a boom tube that can return them to the watchtower if need be. But Green Lantern isn't satisfied with that as a solution. Sure, it gives them an escape route, but it leaves this world to suffer under Darkseid's rule. For John, that's not good enough. They need a solution that protects everyone. Superman presents a different approach. No matter what challenges lie ahead, no matter what Darkseid unleashes, he believes that if they face it together, they'll overcome it like they always do. And Superman says something very important here, that if they need a little extra help, he has faith in their new friends. In just this brief conversation between the League, we're able to see their different mindsets, and it's portrayed very well in my opinion. Both Bruce and Diana want a backup plan in case things go awry, whereas John Stewart, being essentially a galactic cop, doesn't see their backup plan as being enough. He really wants to be able to evacuate everyone on this planet if things go sour. And then there's the big blue Boy Scout Superman who says, you know what, all we need is faith in our new friends and each other, and we can handle this threat. It's such a brief conversation, but it really nails home the different values that these characters have, which I think is portrayed pretty well for those who might not be as familiar with DC. As the teams close in on the Chaos Emeralds, they're swiftly intercepted by Darkseid's forces. Wonder Woman and Amy find themselves face to face with Lashina, the leader of the female Furies. She uses electrified whips to fight her foes, and she's no pushover. She's gone blow for blow with Wonder Woman and Superman before. Despite the threat she poses, Amy and Wonder Woman prove to be a surprisingly effective duo, as Diana grabs the whip, allowing Amy to move in to attack. Elsewhere, Green Lantern and Silver confront Mantis, a humanoid insect imbued with power by Darkseid himself. While he is rather powerful, he's one of those villains who is typically dispatched with relative ease whenever I see him appear in anything. Meanwhile, Superman and Knuckles once again square off against Calabac, but this rematch feels more like routine cleanup than a real threat if I'm being honest. But the most compelling confrontation comes from Batman and Shadow, who locate Steppenwolf, who is one of Darkseid's elite generals and is already in possession of a Chaos Emerald. Now, Steppenwolf is probably someone you might have heard of before, even if you're not a huge fan of DC, seeing as he was the main antagonist in the Justice League movie. Steppenwolf takes one look at Batman and Shadow, and he's rather quick to underestimate the two of them. As he puts it, they're nothing more than a mortal man and a tiny animal. But underestimating these two is a huge mistake. Batman quickly tosses a flashbang, temporarily blinding him and giving Shadow the opportunity he needs. In a blink, Shadow seizes the Chaos Emerald and activates Chaos Control, stopping time itself. What follows is a barrage of lightning-fast attacks that leaves Steppenwolf knocked out cold before he even realizes that the fight had begun. For once, Batman is genuinely impressed. He admits that he couldn't even track Shadow's movements at all, and Shadow tells him it would have been impossible to track, seeing as he stopped time. Batman immediately recognizes the tactical value, telling Shadow that Chaos Control may be their best shot at defeating Darkseid, and Shadow takes a moment to aura farm and gloat with his signature line, but just before he can finish, the bridge begins to shake rather violently. The world itself is beginning to come apart, cracks forming in the ground as chaos energy crackles across the sky. For the inhabitants of Sonic's world, cataclysm like this isn't exactly new, and this isn't the first time the world had been split apart. However, this time with the chaos energy, it does feel different. Darkseid is actively interfacing the Chaos Emerald with the Dimensional Engine, which is a towering machine that looks almost like a biomechanical organism. We already know that this engine is rather powerful, seeing as it was capable of transporting the Ragnarok across dimensions far beyond the boundaries of known space and time. But now, with the power of even a single Chaos Emerald coursing through it, its potential has grown exponentially. Darkseid's ambitions begin to grow as he clearly sees the power of these emeralds. With just one, he could tear this world apart at will, but with all 7, he could unravel entire universes. And unlike most villains, Darkseid doesn't deal in empty threats. When he promises annihilation, he means to deliver it. With the world already beginning to twist under his influence, Batman understands the shift instantly. They can no longer prioritize finding the other emeralds. If they're going to stop Darkseid, it has to be now. Superman agrees, but questions how they'll get everyone aboard the Ragnarok in time. And right then, cutting through the sky above Sonic and the Flash, the egg carrier comes into view, giving Sonic hope that they might have a ride. For the first time in all of this interdimensional chaos, we finally get to see Eggman, who, of course, immediately deduces that Sonic is smack dab in the middle of all of this. The Flash catches on pretty quick too, guessing that this is Sonic's nemesis, and he takes it one notch further by telling Sonic that, yeah, Superman also has a bald genius villain bent on conquering the world. Of course, it's a nod to Lex Luthor, who is essentially the smartest human of the DC universe. Lex Luthor is a character who's always plotting to undermine Superman and the Justice League in pretty strategic ways. Eggman, by contrast, is usually a bit more bold and unapologetically over the top with his schemes, but something the two of them have in common is that despite their intellect, their downfall is usually brought on by their egos. I do hope Lex shows up in this crossover, even if it's just for a minor cameo. Eggman is clearly irritated by Sonic's presence, and he admits that he's only getting involved because the situation is that dire. Now, this isn't the first time Eggman has allied himself with Sonic to take on a bigger threat, and it's always a special treat seeing these two work together, even if it's usually brief. It's hilarious to me that what really has Eggman peeved is the big floating face. It's so rich with irony because Eggman famously plasters his own unsettling mug on every contraption and fortress he builds, but now that someone else is going around taking his quirk, he's bothered by it. It's such a petty but perfect moment that says everything you need to know about Eggman's ego. For Eggman, there's only room for one giant floating face in the sky, and it's going to be his. However, Flash doesn't seem too sold on trusting this unhinged villain, but Sonic thinks that they can trust him, at least for the short term. And it's a fair question to pose, because if there was ever a time to scheme or quietly scoop up a few Chaos Emeralds while everyone else is distracted, this is it. As Peter Baelish once famously said, "Chaos is a ladder." With everyone aboard the egg carrier, they waste no time heading straight for the Ragnarok. And surprisingly, the egg carrier's shields hold pretty well against the onslaught of firepower, which is a testament to Eggman's engineering prowess. Eggman manages to steer it directly into one of the Ragnarok's massive eyes, creating an opening for the heroes. A few parademons try their best to stop the invaders, but the League easily handles them, as Eggman screams that he won't have anyone else conquering his world, showing us that Eggman could care less what happens to the heroes. He just wants Darkseid stopped so that he is free to conquer the world on his own. And this statement rubs Wonder Woman the wrong way, as she tells Amy that once they're done with Darkseid, she might just stick around to deal with Eggman, and this is something that Amy is all for. Flash manages to reach the Dimensional Engine first, with Darkseid waiting nearby. Sonic arrives a few seconds later, telling him that he's lucky he went the other way, and Flash tells Sonic to cope, which is hilarious, and it's surely gonna spark more speed debates. However, while the two are joking, Darkseid prepares to attack, and as he does, Superman rockets in, intercepting the Omega beams with a devastating punch. The impact staggers Superman as he winces in pain, but holds his ground, telling the other two speedsters they need to pick up the pace. If any of the other characters here tried tanking that hit, they would have been vaporized in an instant. Batman finally steps in and starts commanding the team. All at once, they converge on Darkseid in what is probably my favorite panel of the issue. Superman meets him head-on as they trade punches, neither yielding an inch. This is likely Superman at his absolute peak, unshackled by restraint. Superman often holds back against even the fiercest opponents, knowing that the sheer scale of his power is rather overwhelming. As he puts it, it's like being trapped in a world made of cardboard. However, against Darkseid, there is no such hesitation. He can unleash everything. With Silver, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and Knuckles working in tandem, they manage to subdue Darkseid momentarily, forcing him down to his knees. And Shadow takes this opportunity to hopefully take him down for good. He mocks the League for struggling with someone he believes to be beneath him in typical Shadow fashion, but Batman knows better. He too once underestimated Darkseid, ignoring Superman's warnings, and the world almost paid a hefty price for that. He cautioned Shadow, prompting him to use Chaos Control now before it's too late. And as Shadow freezes time, he's stopped in his tracks when he hears Darkseid's voice. Darkseid reveals that the Father Box has already shown him the secrets of their world, including Chaos Control. Shadow may call himself the ultimate life form, but Darkseid sees the truth. He alone is supreme. In his hand, he reveals the other Chaos Emerald, which he used to counter the effect of Chaos Control. And before anyone can react, he grabs the lasso of truth and hurls the heroes to the ground. Sonic turns to the Flash as he realizes that Darkseid has infused the engine with the power of the Emerald. So the two decide that Flash will disrupt the engine while Sonic makes a play for the Emerald. Sonic leaps into action, pestering the Brute with a flurry of attacks, but once again, it's not enough to phase Darkseid. However, it does give Flash an opportunity to mess with the engine. He begins vibrating at a high frequency in order to locate a critical circuit within the dimensional engine and destroy it, all in hopes of bringing the Ragnarok to a halt. As that's going on, Sonic tries desperately to grab the Chaos Emerald clenched in Darkseid's grasp, but he can't manage to pry it free. This time around, Darkseid is visibly irritated with Sonic, whereas in their initial encounter, he probably thought very little of Sonic. But just as he fires off his Omega beams, Superman, Knuckles, and Amy grab him. The ensuing struggle to wrestle the Emerald from Darkseid reminded me so much of the scene from Infinity War, where the heroes threw everything they had at Thanos trying to rip the gauntlet away. And while the heroes are distracted wrestling the Emerald out of Darkseid's hand, his Omega beams start streaking right towards the Flash, who's too focused on the engine to notice. Luckily, at the last second, Silver and Green Lantern shield him from the blast. As the Flash continues to scour the engine's internals, nothing seems to make any sense. He can't find a weak point because the engine is now chaos-fueled, as Cyborg tells him. At this point, it's not following any logical system of operations, and it might not have one. The very nature of the machine, now that it's chaos-infused, seems to defy science and order. Fed up with the Justice League and Sonic and his friends, Darkseid releases a shockwave that sends everyone flying. Cyborg gets flung into the Flash, and the impact of that drives his arm deeper into the engine's core. It appears that there's a chaos burn all over his arm as he gets free, and I wonder if this will come into play later, as it could end up amplifying the Flash's powers. But for now, they have other matters to worry about as the engine awakens. According to Cyborg and Tails, the dimensional engine is beginning to destabilize, and because of the chaos energy in it, it's distorting the very fabric of time and space. Within minutes, the reality of Sonic's universe itself could unravel. Darkseid, however, is defiant, and with the Emerald clutched tightly in his hand, he faces the machine trying to bend it back to his will, as Shadow scrambles toward his own Emerald, which was knocked from his grip in the chaos. Superman and Wonder Woman grab Darkseid, determined to stop him from regaining control. Meanwhile, Batman knows that he needs to activate the contingency plan now. Green Lantern grabs Sonic and his friends in a bubble, while Cyborg powers up the boom tube for one final escape. Amy looks at Batman, asking what is going on, and Batman echoes something that Superman had said earlier: "We're putting our faith in you." In a flash of light, Sonic and his friends are launched through the boom tube, traveling across dimensions before materializing aboard the Justice League watchtower. There waiting for them is a completely baffled Mr. Terrific, a character who is like Lex Luthor in the fact that he's incredibly smart. I actually became familiar with this character through the Justice League Unlimited show when he took over after Martian Manhunter's resignation, and soon he's going to have a big screen debut in the upcoming Superman film. He quickly assesses that the newcomers are from the world the League traveled to. Tails explains that their world was collapsing and the League had sent them through the boom tube in order to save them. Amy also tells Mr. Terrific that they need to go back and help them, but Mr. Terrific explains that he can't. There are no dimensional coordinates to lock onto. Darkseid, the League, their entire world, it's as if they're gone. And with that, the second issue comes to a close. I think this issue truly outshines the prior. The first issue had the heavy task of laying the groundwork, setting the stakes, and introducing the characters in this ambitious crossover, and it did so very effectively. But with the setup behind us, this issue flows with momentum and impact that I don't think the first one really had. Something I mentioned before was my hope that something significant would happen to the Justice League, which would raise the stakes and shift the balance more in the favor of Darkseid, so that the heroes had to overcome greater odds. And that's exactly what we got with the League's powerful, selfless sacrifice. With them seemingly gone, at least for now, the playing field has drastically changed, and the scale of danger has escalated in a meaningful way. As for Sonic's world, while it appears to be lost, I don't believe it's been destroyed. I think it's just untraceable. It exists outside the boundaries of time and space, locked in a massive state of chaos control. We know Darkseid has already demonstrated an ability to resist or even manipulate that effect. So with the Justice League displaced in time, Darkseid may now have free reign to hunt down the remaining emeralds and bend that chaotic realm to his will. However, I'm also curious if the Flash received some chaos energy from that burn when he was reaching into the engine. It could possibly leave him immune to chaos control as well. I've also been curious about Eggman's role in all of this. Like I said after the first issue, he's a wild card in all of this, and while he assisted the heroes this time around, there's no doubt he's scheming something behind the scenes. I have a feeling we haven't quite seen the last of Eggman. So, now that Sonic and his crew are aboard the watchtower, I'm hoping the next issue gives us more DC character interactions. This chapter had a few delightful surprises such as Big, Vector, and of course Mr. Terrific, who was a standout addition that I did not expect to see at the end of this, but I'd love to see even more of the DC roster show up. Characters like Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Satana, Nightwing, there's so much untapped potential here, and who knows, we might even see Lex Luthor enter the fray. With his intellect, he might be one of the few people that's capable of helping them navigate their way back home. So let me know what you guys thought about this issue and your theories on where this all could be heading. If you want more Sonic lore, check out the video here and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, I want to wish you all the best, take care, peace.